Crystals. You've heard of them, right? They look very weird, very man-made almost, but they're natural, I can assure you. If you want to know more about crystals and maybe how to grow some yourself, keep watching. My name is Adam Faisal, and welcome. In high school, we're taught that matter is all around us and comes in 3 different states: solids, liquids, and gases. The atoms that compose these states of matter are arranged differently. Solids are arranged in an orderly arrangement, and gases are free particles. But that's a simplification. Solid materials exist on a spectrum. On one end you have crystalline materials, and the other you have amorphous materials. Crystalline here means that the particles inside of that material are arranged in a repeating manner. Amorphous just means the opposite of that. Crystalline materials are usually hard, thick, denser, while amorphous materials are usually softer and more malleable. Of course, no materials can be 100% crystalline because there will always exist small micro imperfections within the crystal structure itself, which we call crystal defects. But for most practical purposes, crystals are just materials that have a high degree of crystallinity. So now you know what crystals are. Materials where the atoms that compose it are in an orderly arrangement. But turns out there are many ways to orderly arrange atoms. In the 1800s, a dude called Auguste Bravais found 14 of the most basic atom stacking arrangements that we call the Bravais lattices. The simplest Bravais lattice that we can think of is the cubic crystal structure, where 8 atoms are at the corner of a cube. But what if we placed an atom in the middle of all these atoms? Well, now we have the body-centered cubic structure, or the BCC for short. What if there's an atom between each face of the cube? Well, now it's a face-centered cubic structure, FCC for short. An example of an FCC crystal is halite, or more commonly known to us as sodium chloride or table salt. So how can we grow a rock from some white powder? Well, let's get to the kitchen and find out. Before you begin, here are some words of wisdom. Number 1, used uniodized salt. If you want the best crystals, the purest ingredients will have to be used. However, if you can't get your hands on any uniodized salt, normal table salt can still work. For me, I used Himalaya salt and uniodized salt, and both of them gave results. So it really comes down to how you prepare the solutions that matters. Number 2, be patient. Crystal growing takes time, and the best crystals need all the time you can have. With that in mind, let's get cooking. Step number 1, create a supersaturated solution. A supersaturated solution is one where no more salt can dissolve in water. The solubility of salt in water is 36 grams per 100 milliliter. So all you have to do is just add more than that per 100 milliliter. For me, I added 40 grams per 100 milliliters of water. First things first, you want to heat up the water. Then you add the salt into the heated water. Stir until the salt has completely dissolved. Continue heating the solution up until you see white flakes appear on the surface of the water. Once these white flakes start appearing, you can turn off the heating and leave it to cool. I left it for about 30 minutes and I came back to pour out the solution into a glass jar. Inside the pot where you cooked the solution, you'll have a lot of excess salt. So you can either recycle the salt or get rid of it. That's up to you. Now we need to let the solution cool down and stabilize. We don't want evaporation to happen right now because the particles inside of the solution have a lot of kinetic energy, and this kinetic energy can cause crystal defects if crystallization happens. So we leave it for a day and come back to filter out whatever has precipitated. What we're left with is a supersaturated solution of salt. Step number 2, nucleation. Before we can get big crystals, we need small crystals. Crystal seeds, if you will. So now, take a petri dish or a lid of a container, which is what I used, and pour some salt solution into that container. Just pour enough so that the top of it will cover the surface. Don't pour too much because it'll take a long time to evaporate. Now, you must leave the container in a cool, dark, quiet place. We don't want anything to disturb the crystals while they're forming. Do not expose the containers to any wind movement or shake it around too much, because if you do, guess what? There'll be crystal defects that can form. So after 2 or 3 days, you'll come back to find that you'll have a bunch of little tiny crystals, which means we can move on to the next step. Step 3, crystallization. Finally, we can take out the best crystal seeds and put them into their own containers. Now, we pour a bit of the solution, just enough to submerge the salt crystals, and we leave it in a cool, quiet, dark place. You can leave these crystals for as long as you want. Just make sure that you top up salt solution into their containers. And now, after a day, a week, a few weeks, even months of waiting, you'll have salt crystals. One thing cool you'll notice about salt crystals is that they are square in shape. This is because they are FCC crystals. For myself, the largest crystal that I have grown is about 7 millimeters, and of course I have a few others which are very square looking, very cubic, if you will. One interesting thing I want to point out is just the similarities between the naturally forming halite and some of the crystals that I was able to form. They might not look one-to-one, color is a bit off, but in terms of like the cubic structure being quite prominent, it's quite close actually. And it's generally impressive how cubic even the naturally forming one looks. One thing that's been on my mind this entire time is, what the hell do they taste like? For science, I guess I have to try one, I guess. Oh, but it's nice. I mean, it's salt. Oh, it's really salty. But it's not like anything too salty. Like, it's just salt. I don't know if this is healthy or not.